What's up, peeps? Welcome back to another episode of Avenue A. I'm your host, Kelsey Bentz, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I see we already have a few viewers. I'm so excited to be back with another episode. I was just talking backstage with my guests tonight that I realized recently that I took almost a month off of Avenue A, sort of like inadvertently for the holidays. It kind of just happened. But so it's been a minute. But I'm so glad to be back. And if you notice, I have some improvements here. Thank you so much. I'm feeling super legit about it. Shout out to my producer, Dana, for getting this custom Avenue A light for me. So I'm really excited to debut it tonight for all of you. Got to get that branding on point, if you know what I'm saying. So yeah, I'm just happy to be here. For those who are tuning in for the first time, welcome to Avenue A. Avenue A. Hi, Grandma. Thanks so much for tuning in. Dana says, what a great Christmas gift. Thank you, Dana. You are the one who got it for me. For those tuning in for the first time, Avenue A is a platform that I created coming out of an acting degree into the pandemic as a way to stay connected with my fellow artists and actors in this kind of current moment of lack of connection. It was really hard to figure out ways to stay connected with my fellow artists. So Avenue A was an idea that I came up with and a platform that I came up with to not only stay connected with my fellow artists, but also continue to learn from my peers and my colleagues. So we've had almost 30 episodes so far, and yeah, I'm excited to be here. So tonight we have some really amazing guests joining us, and I think we should just jump right in. So tonight joining us, we have Makena McElroy and Owen O'Leary, two friends of mine and amazing artists. So Makena McElroy is an actor and activist originally from California. She graduates from NYU in May, having studied drama, mental health, and politics during her 4 years. She's so excited for Swampcast to find an audience, as it's the culmination of a months-long project with one of her best friends without ever seeing each other in person. We're going to talk a lot tonight about Owen and Makena's podcast project, Swampcast, so I'm really excited. She loves to practice contemporary and jazz dance and loud singing in her tiny NYC abode, where you can always expect a new homemade baked good, and it's probably gluten-free or something. Owen O is an NYC-based singer, actor, and artist. He co-stars, produces, edits, and scores the podcast Swampcast and Get Wrecked. His self-written and produced EP called Where the Birds Go can be found on all streaming platforms. Follow at Broleary on TikTok, Insta, and Twitter for updates. He's also a big fan of sharks and Dolly Parton. Fun fact. So without further ado, let's bring on our two amazing guests tonight. Hello, you two.
Hey!
Thanks so much for joining me.
Oh my gosh, it is a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having us on.
Oh my goodness. I'm really excited because today's sort of a big day for you both, where you released the first round of episodes for Swampcast, your podcast. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, we're being so polite.
No, Owen, you go.
Yes, it is crazy because we have been sitting on this for so long. Because it was just way more, it's become so much more than I ever anticipated it being. The first 3 episodes are out today on all streaming platforms, wherever you can find podcasts. We put 3 out so people can binge them right in a row.
That's great. I love it. So can you talk a little bit about how you two know each other and what your connection is? And then also sort of give us the background on Swampcast. Like, what is it? Why did you create it? Sort of the process of developing this project that's become so near and dear to you both.
Yeah, so me and Owen met very early on in our freshman year of college. We both are in the musical theater program at NYU, and I think there was an immediate spark, and we've just been really close ever since. But we started, well, Owen had the idea for Swampcast, partially because he sort of lived in a swamp-esque environment this summer, but brought me on early in the project to, develop it. And then we brought on as many of our friends as we could to record the podcast. And we really wanted it to be something that was, we're obviously really stressed about the political climate right now. And I think it's really important to be making art about that. But this is not that. Even though it's about like politics, it's about an election in a swamp, but it's not, we actually tried very hard to make it separate from that, just because I think people need to laugh right now. And we wanted to like it's very like serious, obviously, but this is like something completely just funny and really, really silly.
So for our audience, Swampcast is a podcast that's fully improvised, and it's about characters who live in the swamp.
Yes, and play a crocodile named Harmony.
Yes.
And Owen plays a raccoon named Crush.
Amazing. And your two characters are sort of navigating the political climate in the swamp. Like they're sort of advocating for certain candidates and stuff like that, right?
We have a little unlikely animal friendship because our idea is like the crocodile is very old, like she's been in the swamp for so long. And then my character, the raccoon, is like 18. So they have like really different perspectives on life. And they get to go through and meet everyone together. And yeah, we're convincing them to vote for a mayoral candidate, like politics at a local swamp level. Although throughout the process, the mayor has kind of turned into like a totalitarian figure of like, just like the mayor's like king, basically.
Yeah.
But let's raise the stakes.
So Owen, tell me a little bit about, where this sort of idea came from. Makena mentioned that, you were living in this sort of swamp-ish area during the pandemic. So what was the, where did it come from? I'm so curious.
I have been so lucky and have been given so many opportunities throughout this horrible pandemic that's happened. I lived at my parents' beach house, in quotes, because it is loosely a house. It was really a shack in a swamp. Basically, I had to cook on a hot plate in my bedroom, and I would do my dishes in the shower, and I didn't have walls. It was just pilings. But also, I lived there by choice. They weren't like, go live in the swamp. I was like, let me live in the swamp. Oh
my gosh.
And after living there for a while, like most of my ideas, it came to me in a dream. That's kind of crazy to say, but I oftentimes wake up at random hours of the night and I'll type into my phone notes whatever idea from a dream I had, and then I have to decipher it later. This is definitely one of the clearer dreams where I was like, here's the character, here's the character's name, this is their objective kind of thing.
Wow. I did not even know that.
Oh
my gosh.
Almost everything I make comes to me in a dream.
You wake up and you're like, I got it.
Well, I wake up more like, and then type it in and have to decipher it all later. I'm like, those are hardly words. What was I talking about?
My dream ramblings will never see the light of day. So this is a really well-formed idea.
Seriously. Yeah, the key is writing it down, I guess, before you forget it.
That's exactly right, because it goes quick.
Yeah. So I want to talk to you both. We mentioned before, today's the day you released the first round of episodes. That's super exciting. Congratulations. And you're pushing them out and sort of advertising them and, trying to get listeners and all of that as you do with content that you create. And I know you both are artists and actors and multi-hyphenate performers. So I want to pick your brains on what the word networking means to you both. Specifically because Avenue A is a platform that I created to explore networking and what that means. And I kind of came to realize that the word networking holds a very different meaning for every person, and every artist networks, quote unquote, differently. So I'm just curious, with the release of this new podcast, and you're both in your final days at NYU and finishing up your degree, what does the word networking mean to both of you? And how do you both go about networking in your careers and in your lives?
Yeah, so honestly, when you say networking, I think negative. Like, I think like going to some like weird kind of like fair where you just like kind of make loose tie connections with like business people or something. But being on the creative side, like the creative team side of the project, or like being sort of the driving force behind the project as opposed to just being an actor in something, has made me realize like everyone who we had on the podcast was a friend, or so like someone we knew, and someone we knew was funny and like was good at improv.
Yeah.
So in that way, like, I guess we were networking throughout the entirety of college, because most of these people were a couple of people from Owen's arts high school, and then mostly from NYU. So I think it was important both for us to make those connections and really like see what these people were good at. Honestly, like some of these people I just think are the funniest people in real life. It's not like we've seen them do like stand up or anything. We just know that they are funny. So that was important for us, and it was important for them, I guess, because they got to like take part in this.
That's so interesting. I like how you put that. Like, it sounds to me like your sort of definition or understanding of networking is more reaching out instead of like reaching up, because I think a lot of people, or maybe like the general definition of networking, to what I understand, is sort of what you were saying, like hobnobbing with these people who you don't really know, and you're like at this event and you're trying to like connect with, like, and you have no strings to tie you to them, and it's just like weird and awkward and disconnected. But the way that you're sort of putting it, I think is so spot on. Like, you're focusing on who are your peers and who are the people that you want to work with and who are the people that inspire you artistically. And I think that is so cool. And the fact that you both are pursuing those relationships for your project, I think both makes it fun for you both, I assume, and for, the friends that you're working with. And it also, I think, comes through in the work too, because you can't release an improv podcast if you aren't enjoying what you're doing. Like, I think it would come through if it was just like, if you weren't passionate about it, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it's important also that we were like comfortable with these people. We weren't, it was our first time doing anything like this. Like, me and Owen don't really have an improv background. We're funny, but like we don't have a comedy background. So we wanted to be comfortable like messing up and like going through like multiple takes of a scene. And also I think like what you said, I mean, hopefully eventually we will be reaching up as opposed to just out in terms of like connections. But I think even when you're like talking to people who maybe are older or more into the scene or have more connections, it's important to like have like better instead of more connections, and like have the same sort of like, I know who this person is, not just like I know their name or I know like what they
like
can
their
do.
email address.
Yeah, exactly. Even if I haven't seen them in a real show, like hopefully you can give off some sort of like impression in even just a short time, as opposed to just like, oh, I'm so glad to use you for your stature or for what you can give me.
Right, absolutely. Owen, let's go to you. I'm really interested in your perspective on this question.
Yeah, the word networking has really shifted a lot for me in the past year, because I definitely, freshman and sophomore year, I would go to like networking events or like something like that where you're like, pick me.
Yes.
And I think as an artist, you already have plenty of that, especially as a theater artist. You go to an audition, that's the same. It felt like the same thing. In the spring, I was supposed to have a reading of my musical that I wrote at NYU. And I was like, my friend who does this would be great at this role. My friend who does this would be great at that role. And after they were cast, they showed up and they killed it just as I thought they would. Several of those people who I cast in that musical are also guests on Swampcast.
Yes.
Because it's just the kind of friend or the kind of artist or the kind of person where you're like, I know they're going to show up. I know they're going to do a good job. They're going to be on time. They're going to have their shit down. And yeah, I guess that version has changed because I was thinking a lot about it. And like, I was thinking like, if Swampcast were to not take off, because I don't like that kind of term, but like
Sure.
if it were to gain popularity and we would be able to incorporate like a higher stature caliber level of guests than just our very good friends who are the highest caliber in the first place,
Yes.
I would be terrified.
Yeah.
Like to have like an improv. I'm a huge podcast nerd. Like I listen to all the podcasts. If I were to have someone on the show who I've listened to like their entire backlog of everything, and I like know they're an improviser and know they're a comedian, I would freeze up instantly. Our first episode, we had our very good friend Christian on, and the first thing they did was they did this whole monologue at the beginning, which can be found in the beginning of episode 1. And I told them we only need like a few minutes here, like of a generic speech. They gave us this incredibly funny, incredibly specific 18-minute long speech that I had to cut down.
No.
And after that, me and Makena were terrified. We had to go back and re-record everything we said because we were just fumbling because we were like, oh no, they're too good. Everyone's too good.
Like the very first thing we ever recorded, and it was spot on. We were
And they just like popped out the gate with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Wow. I love that so much. But I think, I mean, what I'm hearing from both of you and what really resonates with me as well is just the idea of connecting with your peers, you know, like I think that's what it's all about. And I remember growing up, like I was always like, okay, like the key to like success in this industry is, you know, getting cast in things and thereby like making contacts with like casting directors and people in places of traditional power, right? Like getting directors to like you and then like call you back or whatever. But as I got older and went through NYU and the program and everything, I found that, I mean, yes, that's part of it, right? Like that's just kind of the game if you're in the theater industry. But it's so much fun and more, I don't know, like personally fulfilling, I think, to like pursue relationships with your peers and like other artists who really light you up and who you want to create with instead of creating for, you know. I think that's an important distinction. Like I've realized over the course of this pandemic that, you know, art isn't going to be made really unless you make it for yourself. You know, like it's not, no one's banging down our doors to like create stuff, unfortunately. So it really is finding what lights you up and connecting with the people who also light up about that same thing and then going forward. And that's why I think, you know, your project with Swampcast is just so exciting. And I'm so happy for you because that you guys are doing exactly that. So I hope you both feel proud of what you've done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That kind of segues into something that I talk about a lot on my other podcast, which is yet to be released. It's me and my sister interview people about their music recommendations or like artists about their process in writing. But a big thing we talk about is like, you just do it and then it's done. Like no one's going to call you up and say, we heard a snippet of you singing, we want you to make an album. If you have music in your heart and you want to write it, write it. I have $100 mic and I released an EP and it was $100 mic I bought on Craigslist.
Yeah, you did. And music videos.
And music videos that I shot on my iPhone 7.
Hello.
That I had to do when you were in high school.
Yes.
You just do it and people will like it if your heart's in it.
Yeah. Ugh, that's very inspiring to me. And that's definitely not something that I grew up like understanding really. Yeah, it really took the pandemic and sort of just like such a lack of opportunity artistically for me to be like, okay, well, There's no choice but for me to do stuff that I want to do and create it myself.
Yeah.
So
And
go ahead.
Sorry. I think like a thing that I was told, especially when I was in high school, but also in like the beginning of college, is like, make sure when you go out there, you are like 100% fully formed, like, so you're not going to show anybody like something that is not your best work.
Yeah.
And like, we all know that we're never going to be 100% fully formed. We're always changing and growing, especially as artists. Yeah. So when Owen first came to me, I was like, what if this isn't good enough? Like, this is my first time doing anything like this. Like, should we even release this? And what I like came to and why I decided to do this project is like, even if it's probably not going to be the best work of my entire career, but it's still going to be okay. And maybe it will be, but it's still going to be something, you know, and it's going to be out there and it's going to be learning and growing. So
absolutely. And you never know, right? Like, I think whatever the best work of our career is going to be, we probably won't even know it while we're in it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it's only like when you look back on something that you really realize like, oh, that was so impactful. So it's important
and
to
you especially won't know that it's the best work like before you do it. Like, like deciding before you even start to give up or whatever. That's like a cliche, but you really won't know.
Yeah, that's so true. So speaking of, you know, this current moment of the pandemic and being artists in this time and like really striving to create work, I'm wondering, how has the pandemic shifted both of your artistic identities and like the way you relate to your own artistic identity? And how are you both navigating that? And then sort of additionally, how does this new podcast, Swampcast, play into that? Big question.
I once again can say I've been so extremely fortunate through the course of this. Throughout school, especially junior year, I was starting to get really frustrated with the structure. I know the spark started sophomore year when I was in this tap class, and I was like, I don't like tap dancing. I don't like it. And they're like, well, you got to tap dance if you want to be on Broadway, and you got to do a flat ball change to get cast. And I'm like, but I'm not going to do it ever. Like, I seriously think I'm never going to ever do that. Yeah. So why can't instead I spend this time that I would have been doing that on writing and producing a song? Because that's something I like to do. Yeah. Or watching a YouTube tutorial, which honestly is the biggest secret of all. Like, don't go to college, just go to YouTube University.
You heard it here first.
But that's besides the point. So the freedom to pursue the things that I wanted to, because I finally had, well, I guess I had somewhat of the time before, but like, the emotional capacity to do, basically, because when you're in school, you're drained. You're saving every ounce of your being for that scene in acting class next week where you have to break down on the floor. You're not keeping up with your own work in the same way. No. And over the summer, I was working 6 days a week at a coffee shop. I wasn't like, let me sit in Virginia in this shack and only do art. I was working a lot, but it has really given me the chance to explore what is it I like to do rather than what do I think I have to do in order to be successful or in order to get the big yes from someone and send me to Hollywood.
And that was something that you developed during this time, whereas before it was more of a focus on like what is required of me.
Yes, and it was a lot of pent up frustration and not knowing why, and I think that's definitely why.
Yeah. Yeah, that's impactful. Makena, what about you?
Well, I think when I got to college, and like we said, we were in a musical theater program.
Right.
And I was like, well, my ultimate goal is when I graduate, I'm going to be on Broadway, and I'm like, have that job and go right into it. Now, obviously, that like definitively is not going to happen because it's like not going to be open till at least fall, if then.
Right.
So, and something that I heard from people is like, if this is not the only thing you can imagine doing, you shouldn't be doing it. Like, because musical theater is so hard and there's so much rejection, only do it if it's the only thing you can imagine doing. And like, that was never true for me. Like, I loved school in high school, and I have always been really like politically involved. And I've always like considered going into politics, and just not being able to give up that artistic dream. So I knew that was something I had to pursue. Yeah. But I think what I've learned over the pandemic is like, I'm never going to be just one thing. And so trying to be like, well, if I don't focus my whole heart on this, I'm never going to be successful. Like, maybe if I focus my whole heart on it, I won't be successful because there are so many other parts of myself that I want to be developing. So like over the pandemic, I got to work on a couple campaigns and like work on like social media stuff, but also just talk to candidates and really get to the bottom of like how you can make your community better, which like, isn't that what we're trying to do with art anyways? Like make our community better, make the people around us happier. So I think going forward, my life is always going to be a combination of different things. And like, even this podcast, it's not musical theater, it's a podcast. So like, it's always going to be a combination. I don't have to box myself in order to be successful.
Yeah. I literally was getting chills when you were talking about that, because that's such a thing, I think, with acting school, like in particular, because I also like had that ingrained in me since before, even I think in high school, you know, it was like, if you want to do this, like you have to abandon everything else. You can't have like a backup option, right? Like you have to go all in or not at all. And so I definitely adhered to that in a lot of ways. And I was like, okay, fine. Like I'll put it all on the line to do this. And then of course, when the pandemic hit, it's like, okay, well, I have to do something else, obviously, like literally to support myself. And then also like to stimulate myself creatively, I have to like figure out new ways and new modes of artistic expression. Right. And so that's definitely something that I've come to as well during this time, is like, I think having multiple, like being a multi-hyphenate, right, is such a word that's like kind of coming into the realm of the artistic, you know, world or whatever. But I think it's so important, even for like adding to like enriching yourself artistically, like having multiple skills and like experiencing different parts of life and different areas of life is essential to being able to access different types of characters in acting, right? And like, and being able to understand like, okay, yeah, I have now experience in, you know, like podcasting. And if I play a role where someone's a producer, like if I hadn't done, you know, hypothetically, if you hadn't done or had this experience, you might not have been able to get closer to that, I don't know, character, just an example. But I mean, I think that that's so true.
And I think that, we all have opinions.
No, you go
into it. Yeah.
I think some of the best and most complex art comes from synthesis. So the whole idea of like the all-in-one thing that we were talking about is not very attractive to me in the slightest. When I see a piece of theater, I get disappointed if it's just your average run-of-the-mill musical, you know? Yeah. I want to see a musical / performance art piece where they're all on their tiptoes the whole time. Like, give me something to think about.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't just a podcast. It's like a podcast meets theater, meets a storyline, is a conversation. Like, that's where the conversation starts to happen, where you can pick it apart.
And I think it would have been so easy for Owen and I to be like, we do theater. Theater is what we know. Let's like try to do theater, but distance or but digital.
Right.
But instead, like, and no shade to like people who are doing online theater at all.
Right.
But like, we both love podcasts. We were like, let's just do something that is like already digital, it's already distance, it's a whole new medium, it's not theater, but like we brought those theatrical elements, and especially Owen with his like scoring, like there's probably at least one, probably two songs per episode of Swampcast, and that is all.
I actually didn't know that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's crazy, and that is all like Owen's like the producing and the singing and the like mind for music theory that he has like come into like a podcast. There's also a lot of action sequences, which is I don't know where those came from, but it is an audio medium. We just kept forgetting.
We would have all of these like images in our head where we're like, we're running under this and then we're jumping over the fence, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's perfect. And then it comes to the moment where we have to do it. I'm like, oh,
you're like, what does that sound like? Just a bunch of wrestling. The audience.
Well, I found that the best way to convey it was through musical sequence, which is already something that my skill set lies in. So yeah, I do a lot of underscoring for the show, where you got to add some intense music to intense parts. Or in Kelsey's episode is one of our music heavy episodes, because I have this harpsichord backtrack, because it's like a creepy kind of feeling for most of the time. That episode comes out next Friday. I'll plug that right now.
Yes, stay tuned, everyone. I was in an episode of Swampcast along with Presley Renner, who was a guest on Avenue A like months ago. Small world.
Which brings back our networking, because you, me, and Presley were all in a show together in the spring. Because just today, you tagged me in our year friendship anniversary on Facebook, and I was like, 1 year? I've known Kelsey for 1 year. We've worked together so much. It's like we've known each other for 10 years.
I know. And it was so beautiful too that like Facebook memory came up on the day that you're coming on Avenue A. Like that was just so, I don't know, cathartic or something. Yeah. So we are out of time. Unfortunately, time literally flies when you're having fun. But where can people find you both online? And then also where can they find Swampcast?
So Swampcast is Swampcast Pod on basically everything. Also, we're on Facebook, and we have like a group on Facebook in case you want to like chat about the pod. And then I am Makena Hope, Makenaa Hope, on like Instagram, and I don't know what else I'm on. I'm pretty much just on Instagram, but you can find me there.
Amazing. And Owen, I know you're Bro Leary.
Yes, I need to change it, but now I've branded myself so much as it, it's hard to change. Because
people must not change it.
They always read it as Brown. People on TikTok will mention me in a comment and be like, "You're so funny, Brown." Brown?
Brown?
What's your name now?
Oh my god.
Anyway, yeah, Bro Leary. Please follow me on TikTok. Lots of fun stuff coming there. I've taken a slight break because I got a lot of followers very suddenly, and I got so scared about it. But you can also find me on Instagram and Twitter. Friend me on Facebook. Why not?
Amazing. Thank you both for taking the time to come on Avenue A and be my guests. It was truly the highlight of my day and my week. And I'm so excited to hear the episode. I haven't heard any of it yet. I'm just so excited. So yes, I'm so happy to know you both, and it's a pleasure to have worked with you and to have you on tonight. So I have so much gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to know you. It's been really great.
Okay, have a good weekend, you both.
Bye.
Bye. And that concludes another episode of Avenue A, where we talk acting, we talk networking, we talk the industry. We really just talk about whatever we want, which is the beauty of creating your own work, because no one can tell you what to talk about or what not to talk about. I'm really feeling that aspect. Thank you so much for those of you who tuned in live. It's so fun to know that there are people out there who are joining us in this conversation that we have. And I see there's a lot of comments. Nadine, thank you so much for tuning in. Lorraine, Grandma, you're my number one fan. Love you so much. Of course, my producer is here. Thank you. So Follow us on Instagram at Avenue A Live. We're also on Facebook, Avenue A Live, and YouTube at Kelsey Bentz under my profile. So thank you and have a great weekend. We will see you guys next week.